Hello, welcome to the Youthwork Plus podcast. Thanks for joining us today. This is our Christmas special. If you've been here for the whole run of podcast episodes, or you joined us later and listened to the back catalogue, you might recognise our guest today, who is one of our OG podcast hosts, Olly. Olly and I started the podcast 42 episodes ago.
Oh, wow.
We are going to be sharing today some of our highlights and lowlights of youth ministry, because I've been involved in ministry over 20 years, maybe even 25 years now. I know I don't look old enough.
It's similar, and I definitely do look old enough.
Olly, for those people who haven't been around to know where you've been, you're now a curate in post at a church in Chipping Norton, which is why you haven't been available for podcast episodes. Is there anything you want to share to update people?
It's been really fun. We moved in July, and as ever, I was naive about everything. It's been much busier than I thought it would be. Turns out vicars are actually quite busy. So if you're working for a vicar, then be nice to them. And yeah, it's been great. It's a nice place to live. Jeremy Clarkson, which is quite exciting because he lives around here.
Yeah, his farm's Chipping Norton, isn't it?
Yeah. A few minutes walk. I've walked to his farm shop.
Nice.
There's nothing in it though because it was after the weekend. So we got a pork pie and a shandy, and that was all that was left.
Nice. So Olly, to explain to our listeners who are watching the video version of this, what is on your head?
Well, having said I moved house in July, Becky messaged, said, "Oh, make sure you wear your Christmas jumper or something Christmassy." And I cannot find a single thing that's Christmassy. So as punishment to myself, I found a ribbon and tied it around my head. So Becky's looking like fresh off a Christmas photo shoot. I look like an idiot with a bow around my head. So that's probably about right.
And if you're not watching the video version, switch to the video version if you want to see what we're talking about. So we're going to share some of our highlights and lowlights. I have put a bunch of mine into a jar. So how we're going to do this is I will pick out something from the jar. There's a mixture of highlights and lowlights in here that I've written a little note about to remind me. And then Olly's going to share something, a story of his off the back of each of mine. Hopefully there might be some stuff in there that will make you laugh, that will cheer you up this Christmas time. Or you might be in solidarity with some of our lowlights and the things that have gone wrong in ministry. Or you might be thinking, oh no, I hope that never happens to me. But we hope this will be a fun episode for you to listen to or watch or consume, however you. So I'll let me give this little jar a rummage, and we'll see what is going to come out first. It's a low light. I've written little pluses and minuses on them to let me know. Okay, right. This is a bit of a funny one. The card says Snowdome Motorway Madness. So early on in my youth work career, not long into my first youth work job, my role there was community youth worker. So it was to do a bunch of outreach and social stuff and try and combine the young people we were connecting with outside of church with the young people that we had connected with our church. It was coming up to Christmas time. I thought, let's do a Snowdome tobogganing session in Milton Keynes. And at the time I was in youth work in Luton. So it was like 45-minute trip up the motorway to get to the Snowdome. So we were in several youth leaders' cars. So we had 2 youth leaders per car and 3 or 4 young people. And the plan was meet at our youth centre, drive up to the Snowdome. I had all the tickets, and we could get going on our little tobogganing pre-book session. What happened was that I had a young leader in my car with me. So just not long turned 18. I don't think they could drive. To add to the story, but I got on the motorway. Off we go on the way to this tobogganing social. When we get to Watford, I realise that I've gone south on the motorway instead of north. So I suddenly realised, and I'm like, oh no, everyone's going to be there waiting for us. I'm the one who's got the tickets. So I had to ring one of our other youth leaders and explain so that they could at least start. And then we arrived 45 minutes late for the session. So that was big youth work fail. Not very long into my youth work career.
Mine, also transport related. funny in retrospect, but probably not very not funny at the time. Nearly cost me my job as a youth worker. So we did a big old trip to Soul Survivor, as existed back then, and I think we had, it was either a few cars or a minibus, but the minibus was a bit too full. So basically, our group had just grown a bit outside of our kind of logistics capacity. But one of our young people said, "Oh, it's all right. I passed my driving test. I'll drive." And he had a rubbish, I can't remember what it was, like bashed out, proper first driver's car, Nissan Micra style. Could go about 50 miles an hour as long as the wind was blowing behind it and it was downhill. And we were all really tired and we were gearing up, ready to go back. So we'd all driven there. And this lad who'd driven by himself said, "I'm feeling a bit sleepy. I'd appreciate having someone in the car to help keep me awake." But he's 18. And he said, "Oh, is it okay if this girl who's also 18 goes in the car with me?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. We haven't got consent for that." And they were both like, "No. We've spoken to our parents and they're fine with it. They think it'd be good. They'd prefer it this way." And so I was like, okay. I knew these young people well, so I trusted them. And that unfortunately was my mistake, because actually what they'd said is absolutely no way. That the parents of the girl said, "Don't want you going in the car with this guy. He's only just passed his test." I didn't know that. They drove all the way home, literally minutes from home, when rear-ended the lad's car, and meant it wasn't drivable anymore. And then that was the report that got to parents, and it was an absolute disaster. It was a huge low light, almost kind of gave up doing youth work. But it was really a case of, even though I trusted these guys, actually I'd not heard it from the parents. So it's a massive learn for me as a young youth worker. That was pretty rubbish.
Yeah, that was very rubbish. Okay, that's what else I've got. Hopefully, it's a positive. We need to follow a negative with a positive, I think. Okay, right. Team weekend away with young leaders is what I write. Taking your leaders away for a weekend away. We did it a couple of times at a previous job, and we took young leaders with us as well. And we spent time investing in our leaders, spent time together, did cooking and ate together. And it was just a really fab time of being able to invest in them and gel together as a team and feel like we were all in it together. And that was just Youthwork gold, I'd say. We obviously thought it'd be a good idea, but we didn't know how much of a benefit that would then have on the Youthwork following that.
That's really cool. We never did anything we should have done. I did do some trips to Centre Parks with the leadership team, which was really, really fun. Yeah, Solnet, and then after Solnet finished, we just did it anyway.
Did your own thing.
Which was really, really cool. That time away, that was a real highlight for me. The team that we had was just incredible. So they'd come around to our house for barbecues and things, and every time you hang out with them, you think, "Oh yeah, these are actually a really great group of people. Like, I actually want to hang out with them anyway." By virtue of the fact that they're really great. I took 2 young leaders on a mission trip to Moldova, and it was sort of half mission trip, half cool experience in a new country where we'd never been before. And that was, again, Youthwork gold. And the payback from that, when we came back, the relationships that we'd made and the confidence it had given people, I think it was really cool.
Yeah, cool. Love it. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. So this is a low light. I used to run an after school club, and we had a lot of young people from the local school come along because the church is on the same road as the school, so they had to walk past us to get home. So it was a really unique opportunity to host an after school club and get a lot of them to come along. But we kind of attracted the naughty ones, which was great because we got to build relationship with them, and some of them became Christians and came along to church stuff, and there was some fab good things that happened. But one of the negatives that happened was that at one session, a boy got angry and threw a chair at another boy across the room, and we were just in stunned shock. We had a whole yellow card systems. He got a 1 or 2 week ban. And had to write an apology letter to us. And obviously we had to speak to the school and his parents to explain what had happened. And thankfully, the boy who'd been hit by the chair, he'd managed to like step out the way, so it only just caught him. Thankfully, he wasn't too badly injured, but yeah, shocking behaviour in work moments.
Yeah, actually, more recently, there's an open youth club here that runs and I help out occasionally. And the first couple of sessions I did, I forgot how much I love just open access youth stuff, getting to know young people and like, just interacting with them. And this is really, really good. So that was a big highlight. But then low lights are, I've forgotten that thing where people fight.
Yeah.
Or throw things at each other. And so the last one I went put me off for a bit. Just a little scrap was breaking out, and then you have to get in between, and in the moment it's fine, you stop them hurting each other, but then it's all the adrenaline and the logistics afterwards, which our youth worker took most of. But that stress and pressure, I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I remember. I love youth work. I hate this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it comes with the territory, especially in some senses it's a good thing, because if you only had the kind of nice, really well behaved kids, actually there's a whole load of other people we should be reaching out to and serving. And when you do that, it's messy.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So seeing older volunteers thriving, especially those who are like parent figures. Like we had a team of volunteers for the after school club that we ran, and some of those that have managed to get involved from the church were parent figures. And I remember them being like really hesitant when they first signed up. They were like, "Oh, we're not sure if we've got anything to offer. Like we're not sure how long we'll stick around for." And I said to them, "No, like you'll be really valued, and like a lot of these young people who come along, they don't have grandparents or they're not in their lives. You'll be an important grandparent figure for them." And they were amazing. They were great. We had this couple, and the lady did knitting and craft stuff with young people, and the guy just got involved and played pool and played table tennis, and they were just a really valued part of our club. And I think sometimes we have this perception that we need to get younger people involved in our youth work stuff, and because they'll relate better to young people. But I think anybody can be a youth leader, and it just goes to show that like even older people have something to offer, even if it feels like it was ages ago since they were young people themselves.
Yeah, and actually even some younger people are just old souls, aren't they? They're not
Yeah.
like cool and trendy. One of the best young leaders who was in my team he was an old man at 7 years old, but actually was just incredible, and he loved people and he knew who he was. He had so many strengths. He wasn't that fussed by trends or anything else that was going on. And actually that's refreshing, I think, for a young
Yeah.
person, because it can be hard if your whole world gets shrunk down to school and what's going on and following all the latest, whatever that trend might be, social media or in the school environment, and have someone who's so outside of that world who loves God and wants to invest in you. That was transformational for me as a teenager. It's transformational. We had so many actual grandparent figures in our team. And then even now, looking at some of the young people who were in the youth when I started and are now in their 30s and are just such positive influences for people. It's amazing. It's an amazing chain. So you're never too old.
Complaints from parents is what I wrote, and I didn't have a specific thing, but I just thought, oh, they're a bit of a bane, aren't they, of youth ministry? When a
Yeah.
parent complains, either gives you a phone call and talks about something that's gone wrong. I can remember one example. So we'd taken young people to I can't remember what it was called now. The ultimate event at Alton Towers. It was like a Christian day out for young people, and they went to the theme park in the day, and then in the evening there was a Christian concert with like the White Message Tribe and other Christian bands and entertainment. So we'd taken a big youth group there in a minibus and some cars, and we let them go off and do their own thing. We didn't make them stay with leaders, but we had a base where they could come back to if there was any problems or anything. But yeah, apparently one of our young people got left behind. They were with a group of young people that just ran off to get to a ride quickly before the queue got big. And apparently she got left behind or something and couldn't keep up or whatever. And she didn't get lost, but she was just like upset that the group had like run off without her.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a parent complain about that, and I remember just thinking, it wasn't a major, massive thing, but I just remember thinking, oh, like, we brought them here for them to have a good time, and that's like a memory of the day that she was left out and left behind, which isn't ideal. But also, it's awful when parents like just aren't happy with what you're doing because you feel like you're failing as a youth leader.
Yeah. I think as well, some legitimate, some less so complaints that I got from parents. Some people were complaining about my lack of organisation and stuff that was actually my fault, which is fair. But then other times, people just taking it out on you. They're just taking out something that's not my fault. So I remember I had a parent complain because I hadn't noticed and then reported to them something that their child was doing on social media. And I was like, well, I didn't notice for a start. And secondly, I'm not a spy. It's not my job to troll through social media. I think all of us, parents, what seems like a big deal in the moment and then later it's not a big deal. And you're kind of getting bashed around by those storms because you're in the middle of it. I remember one time parents were like, we don't know what you're doing with our young people in the midweek groups. We'd really love to know. We're a bit nervous. We don't know what the teaching is, da 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 da. So I was like, oh, fair enough. Legitimate request. But we were pretty slammed and full out of the work we were doing. So I'll set up a regular thing at the start of each term. We'll run through the teaching material that we're doing for the Bible studies in the week. We'll get questions from parents. We'll let them look through a plan and see how it goes. And the first one, it was great. And there were loads of questions. And I thought, oh, cool, this is a good ministry to the parents and helps. You know, we got some good feedback as well. People could air their concerns. Second term, we did it. Loads of effort, no one turned up because they didn't care anymore. In a way, it was a result of the success of the first one. So then they trusted me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're like, oh, you made such a big deal. And I jumped through the hoops and then life moves on. But I'm still stuck in that place because it's still important to me because the youth ministry was my whole world.
Yeah. Okay. This says young people leadership, young leaders leading weekends. We used to take our young people to Soul Survivor, which if you don't know is like a Christian summer camp. But there was a couple of years where we didn't do that, where we chose to just do our own thing. So we really wanted to cultivate connection within the group. We wanted to allow some of our young people to help lead stuff. So we put together a little team of young people who were going to help lead worship. We're going to do talks. We're going to lead little seminars. So we put together our own little camp that we called DIY camp because we did it ourselves.
Creative. Yeah.
And we thought, let's just call it what it is. So we had this great team of young people who were all using their skills and gifts, and it was just amazing to see them just letting loose, leading worship together and doing some of the talks. And that week away was just really special. Not that Soul Survivor wasn't, but it was just special in a different way because it was just our group and there was real like time to connect with each other and time to grow in faith together. And really amazing to see young people like growing in faith and stepping into those like leadership roles.
That's really cool. We did a similar thing actually. I can't remember if it was after COVID, and I don't know if it was just because there wasn't any camps running. I don't remember why we did it ourselves or whether we didn't have time to gear up to go into. Was there a year when there wasn't any summer camps? Anyway, we did a stay at home one. The church had just bought a car park of a pub because it was going cheap and it was next to our church. So we camped on there and we got some local people in to do clay making and actually sat round the campfire in the cold, really low key, some brilliant conversations, and actually young people who then later came to big summer camps but would never have before because it wasn't their thing, really opening up and coming out of their shell, and because they felt a little bit at home. It was amazing. And it was just that thing of this was something we did together. We weren't going to a big event. Yeah, it was cool.
I did a lesson once in a school. Previous job was for a schools work charity. I did lots of lessons, assemblies and stuff. And I was doing it was a 20-minute workshop on mindfulness. And so I was talking about like the power of mindfulness to like, help you with whatever emotions you're feeling. because it helps you to like reflect and actually ponder and realize what it is that's going on in your life. And I looked up and there was a boy just asleep in the classroom. And I didn't really know what to do. I was like, do I make a big deal of it? Like, this workshop's 20 minutes long, like, just let him sleep. But yeah, looking back, it was just like hilarious that there was just this boy asleep in the classroom.
I don't see it as a low light, but we used to have a young person in our youth who was literally the most incredible sleeper I've ever met. And he would fall asleep like standing up. Youth weekends away, or anything that you're away later. He would just fall asleep, and it was incredible. But and it was funny, and he found it funny too, which was good. But it was, for me, it was actually a positive thing, just that he felt so at peace and at home with us, that he didn't feel on edge or like he was being watched or whatever. So he could just absolutely zonk. And I remember he came to a bishop's thing, where young people were all talking to the bishop about stuff, and they were in groups. He also kind of became a family friend, this guy. I still know him. I still think he's brilliant. But he fell asleep mid-discussion on one of those as well. And I just walked and like, oh, wake up, and like gave him a tap. And you could see all the people who didn't know how well I knew him and that he was a friend were like, he just walked past and like shoved that guy.
That's funny. I led quite a few mission trips to the Philippines with young people. We had a connection with a charity out there, and we used to take teams of young people. Our biggest team was the people we took. We had 4 leaders and took 8 young people. We did that for quite a few years, and I remember towards the end, so it always used to be a trip that was open to our young people who were from our Christian youth, our Christian discipleship group, who were like year 10 and above. And then towards the end, there was more mixing between our unchurched young people groups that we led and our church young people groups. And there was young people coming along to the Sunday stuff who weren't necessarily from the church, and there was a lot more mixing, and it just made sense to open the trip up to anybody regardless of faith. And the last trip that we led, we ended up taking a girl with us who wasn't from a church background, wouldn't call herself a Christian, and she came with us. And it was a challenge, don't get me wrong, because the church over there was very charismatic, and there was people praying in tongues, and I think someone might have even got slain in the spirit. And she was freaking out, not because she was scared of what was going on, but she said she felt like she was intruding on people's spiritual experience as an outsider. And I was like, no, don't feel like that, because you're welcome here as much as everybody else. But yeah, just being able to take young people like to a place. Mission trips are unique, aren't they? And that it's sort of like a weekend away or a residential, but you get to go to a different country and experience a different culture and serve in a different way. And you just get to spend time with young people and get to see growth happen. And yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, same. In fact, the jumper I'm wearing now is from one of the trips to Moldova. I'm a huge advocate for mission trips. There was a little phase of bashing them for a bit, being like, what difference are you actually making in the place? You'd be better off just sending them the money. And I mean, that is kind of true. We're not that full of ourselves that we think, yes, look at us, we're all coming here, that'll make such a big difference to you.
Yeah.
But actually, it's about that mutual exchange, I think. And like you said, seeing cultures that are just so different to your own. And if you're a Christian, seeing them worship God and follow Jesus, and seeing how that plays out in a culture that's not yours, both ways round, I think is so good for people. And even on a shallow level, like going and seeing a new place is exciting, but then on the much deeper level, seeing where God's at work in a place that isn't home, having that time away where you're all sort of a little bit on the edge and having to trust in God more is just incredible. And still, when I speak to young people who've got a bit older, they still remember it, and it's still had a lasting impact on them and their faith and their life and their confidence. Yeah, so I think if you're in a place where you can afford it, I think they're just such good ministry tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully you do make a positive impact too. I remember we actually were a bit helpful in the places we went. whether it was just extra pairs of hands smashing down walls and things, which is good fun, or being a novelty. Often when we went to Poland and Moldova, the thing that was useful for the church where we were visiting and had a partnership with was that we were English and we were weird, and they were bringing the kind of weird English people to meet people, and that was just being useful just by who you are.
Yeah. All right, I've pulled out another fail.
No.
It's quite a big one. So we did a whole series on sex and relationships, and it was like a 6 or 8 session series. It was like a big one. We all sat down as a youth team and we were like, how are we going to cover this topic? It's a big one. We don't just want to do a one session thing. We want to cover lots of things within this. We want leaders to be sharing testimonies from like both sides. You know, leaders who have like made mistakes with relationships and sex even, and like we obviously want the message to be like the godly thing to do is to save sex for marriage, which we thought we had done over these 8 sessions. And then shortly after that, one of our young people, who was a teenager, fell pregnant, and it was a shocker because then what ended up transpiring from the parents and from her was that the message she'd got was like it was okay to sleep with her boyfriend, and we were like, we're pretty sure we never at any point in any of the sessions did we condone that. We thought we'd made the message pretty clear, but obviously somehow we hadn't.
It had not got through.
Yeah, that was just whoa, this is not an ideal situation.
We did a little run and a series on sex and relationships. You know, we'd kind of tried to explore it openly, but have a very clear Christian message. At the start, we asked, what's your view on sex before marriage and Christian view of sexuality and all that kind of stuff? And then at the end, we asked them, you know, is it still the same? And basically they were like, yeah. Or even, you know, a few had gone, yeah, I think probably, you know, I'll sleep with my girlfriend or boyfriend when I have one. I think God's, you know, fine with it. I was like, okay, all right. And then I remember going again, it was summer trip to Soul Survivor, and there'd been a talk on sex and relationships. I think it was Andy Croft that did it, and sat there. They listened to the whole thing, and Andy Croft was saying exactly the same things we'd been saying to them over a 3-week period. It just said all the same things, put all the same arguments forward, and at the end there was a group, not everyone who'd been in the other sessions, but a decent half probably were in the thing, and they were like, wow, that has just totally changed my view on everything. Oh, I was like, we said that same stuff to you. But I guess, you know, my takeaway was we were planting those seeds, and people are going to hear what they want to hear at some point. Hopefully it lands. But yeah, I do remember being like, oh, well, good. That was a wasted work and effort.
That is funny. Okay, I've pulled one that is both a plus and a minus. So the previous job, community youth worker. So we had a good relationship with our local school. We did a bunch of stuff for them and with them. And we were like, what else can we do that's going to be useful for you? So they were like, oh, we'd love to do, at the end of every half term, we'd love to do a rewards afternoon for all the children who haven't had any disciplinaries at school, who've got 100% attendance, or it could be they haven't been told off, or they haven't received any negative feedback from teachers and stuff. And so we said, okay, we can do that, because we had a youth centre where they could come and there was lots of activities they could do. We could get out video games. We had a pool table. We had table tennis. We had table football. We had a craft table. We had a little cafe area. So we said, yeah, we can do that. Our capacity is maximum 60 young people to be able to keep them all entertained, because we don't want them to be just milling around, because that's when they get bored and they'll misbehave. So we said that to them. They were like, yeah, that's okay. We don't think we have more than that. And then lo and behold, so we hosted, I think we did like a week's worth of afternoons. So we did Monday for year 7, Tuesday for year 8, Thursday for year 9, etc., etc. And the afternoons came. And so they told us, I think, on the day how many young people were going to come. And they sent staff there as well to help to supervise them, as well as us having volunteers there too. Yeah, they ended up sending 80 to 100 young people for each session. They told us the numbers at the point where people were already entering the building. And what can you do? Like, we couldn't be like, well,
Send them all.
20 of them are not going to be able to come in. So we just had to accommodate it, and had to like bring in some more tables and put some board games out and just maximise on this. I think we ended up putting like a sofa under the stairs, so there was another little area where they could congregate. We're just trying to squeeze in as much activities as we could. But yeah, I remember there was a moment where we were in panic mode. How are we going to fit in and entertain all these young people? But also just a fab opportunity to be able to serve the school and have so many young people through our doors who then we use those as an opportunity to tell them about the other stuff that we did that they could come to, the other youth clubs.
That's really cool. I mean, that was a really well-behaved school. They keep
Yeah,
sending
I
there
know.
kids who hadn't done anything wrong. Maybe flip the other way. When we first started doing the youth, we took over kind of secular youth centre in our village because the government pulled the funding, and it was going to close. We took it over. I thought, maybe 30 young people will come, and we'd kind of prepped for that. And then there were like between 70 and 80 just all descended on this youth centre, and we didn't have a policy. Again, me kind of needing to be more prepared as a young
Yeah.
youth worker. We didn't have a policy for what we were going to do. And so we had all these young people. And on one level, that's incredible. You're like, yes, we've clearly hit a need. This is amazing. It's going to look good on all our metrics. But then there was only 2 of us trained, qualified youth workers we were not ready for this. And it could have been a disaster. We did then have to quickly sort stuff out, and it was a nightmare. It was an hour and a half of, let's just stop these young people from dying. That's our main objective. I had that happen lots of times where a real positive was that we had way more young people than we were expecting. But then the negative of that is you've got way more people than you were expecting, and you're not ready and you're not prepared. I guess I don't know what you would do with that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Now we'd probably have more policies of, sorry,
Yeah.
we've hit 30, you're full, still create a bit of a buzz.
Yeah.
Come back next week, we'll put you on the waiting list, whatever it was. But at the time, we were just like, yay, young people.
Yeah. So I've got another assembly fail here. I was doing an assembly. I can't remember what the exact theme was, but I remember what the analogy was. And what I had was a plastic clear box, and I had big rocks in it, and then smaller rocks and smaller rocks and smaller rocks and sand, and then water that I pour in. And I was talking about something to do with like how there's always room for more. Maybe it was kindness or something. So I'd do this visual analogy at the start of the assembly where I'd pour in these different things one by one and say, do you think we can fit anything more in there? And they'd be like, no. And then I'd be like, okay, well, here's some smaller stuff that we can get in there. And then the last thing was pour the water in, and then the box is full. We can't fit anything else in. And so I'd done this quite a few times. So I was doing it with every year group at the school. And I think I was on the Friday, and it was with the last year group I had doing this assembly. And I'd done the visual bit, and then I was doing the talky bit. And so I was standing, obviously at the front. While I'm doing the talk, I hear a crack, and then water starts pouring to the ground. And there's kids in the front row who are like pointing, who are like, look at that, look at that. And I'm like trying to stand in front of the box
To block it.
to block it so that they're not getting distracted and to like take attention away from it. But I'm realizing that I can't make myself big enough to cover what's happening behind me. And so there's water dripping onto the floor, which becomes louder and louder the more water comes out because there's like a puddle forming on the floor. And I'm kind of thinking, like, shall I stop the assembly? What shall I do? How am I going to get this back to where I need to get to? Because now it's just going to like leak out everywhere. And so it was a moment of panic. But I managed to end up finishing the talky bit, and then
Well done.
they all left the
It
room.
didn't like leak out onto the kids, like none of the.
Thankfully, no. They were like far enough back from like the front, and there wasn't a stage. I think it was the assembly was like in a dance studio or something.
Okay.
It was like wooden floor, and like there wasn't a stage, so they were sat on chairs.
Right, not sat on the floor.
Yeah, no, thankfully not on the floor. So the puddle wasn't getting bigger, leaking towards them or anything like that.
That's good. I did secondary school assemblies. They're always fun. But probably my fail was primary school assemblies. where I would just go like really big with water games, running around games, bringing in sweets, and the
Yeah.
kids loved it. So I'd go in, they'd be like, "Oh, Ollie, oh, Ollie, yay, Ollie's here to do assembly." And I'm like, "Oh, look at this, I'm actually nailing assemblies." And on one level, it was great. But I later found that all the teachers are like, "No, Ollie's coming in." Because I'd get them so
Chaos.
hyped up and wild at the end of my assemblies, because all I do, they'd listen to me, they're having a great time. I'd send them off absolutely wired, no sense of bringing them down, just
Hype them up and then leave, basically.
yeah, drop a bomb and leave the teachers to deal with it, which in retrospect was an absolute fail. I got better over the years and less crazy. So they used to do a really sweet thing at this primary school where they'd have a Christmas dinner and they would invite people who'd done assemblies and clergy and trustees, governors would all come and have a little suite, sit on the tiny, teeny chairs and eat school Christmas dinner. But then I went outside to see the kids and they were like, "Ollie!" And then something switched in them and they'd obviously just all hyped and they're like, "Let's push him in the thorn bush." There's maybe 20 kids pushing me. And it was a lot of pressure and you can't push back because you don't want to like a load of small children.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I probably deserved that. The poor teachers, I put them through.
It's funny. Okay, another positive. Seeing young people grow in faith, own their own faith, and get baptised. I haven't got any specific stories on this, but it's just great, isn't it, when you see those moments of like young people, the penny drops, and they encounter something of God and want to get baptised and make a decision that they want to follow and take those kind of steps. It's like amazing to see, and it doesn't often happen. You don't always get to see the fruit of what we do, but when it does happen, like, it's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge highlight. I mean, it's a real personal one for me right at the moment. My daughter got baptized on Sunday for herself.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
8 and it was entirely her thing. And it was so amazing. I'm still buzzing from it and seeing the impact it has on her faith and her life. And yeah, just such an incredible moment. And as youth and children's workers, we get to be involved in that. I think it's just amazing. It's like that. It's huge for me. Hope getting baptized, my daughter. But I remember the first baptism I ever did for a young person, and they said, "I want you to." I couldn't do it because it was Church of England, and the vicar did it. We used to baptize people in the river. I was in the river with them, and it was profound. I've got friends now who were youth at the time, and I baptized him when he was a teenager in the river. Yeah, it's so incredible. Although the first one I did, we didn't prep the lad properly. We're going to baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Take a deep breath and we'll plunge you in. But he breathed in at the wrong time. And so it's like, "Welcome to your new life in Jesus." Then he came up like, but despite that, it was still an incredible moment to see, yeah, this is literally changing people's lives. The ministry that we do literally changes people's lives for the better and brings joy to God. And I think that's probably the top highlight of all.
Yeah. I've got another funny one. Ripped jeans and stage fail is what my card says. I used to be involved in running a city-wide youth event called Hope MK, and we had 50 young people there, 30-something leaders, and we used to have a session in the morning with worship and a little talk, and then they go out and do social action, and they come back in the afternoon, early evening for like dinner, and then we do some worship, and then they go home for the whole of October half term. And I was hosting the event, and I can't remember whether it was the morning session or the afternoon session, but I remember we were like doing a quick run through on the stage. I'd stepped up onto the stage, and as I did so, the back of my jeans ripped. And I had all underneath one of the pockets was like a tear straight across. And I remember thinking, I literally can't go on the stage with this.
What did you do?
So what I did was I had to tie a jumper around my waist, which sealed it. And then at the next earliest opportunity, I just had to go home and get another pair of jeans. There was like definitely panic moment where I was like, I literally don't know what to do in this moment. This is quite embarrassing.
You must have been so self-conscious as well, stood up at the front, like,
yeah.
"Oh no."
Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's never
That's a
happened to
funny one.
me. I'm very happy to say. It has never happened to me. It wasn't me, but I was leading a kids' summer camp thing with some friends. And one of my mates, we were dressed as clowns because that was the outfit. And he had
As
one of
you,
these,
as you
as you
do.
do, he had those clown trousers that are a big hoop. And then with what are the straps called?
Braces.
Braces. Had
Yeah.
braces over to hold the trousers up. And it was summer and it was hot. And he'd come in jeans and he was like, I can't wear trousers under these. I cannot wear trousers under these. I've got to go just in my boxers. And I was like, no, mate, you've got to wear it. You can't. And he's like, no, we'll just make sure that the braces are super, attached. I won't jump around too much. And I was like, oh, it seems like a bad idea to me. And then he also was deadly scared of wasps. And literally, just as we're doing this final dance song, we got through the whole holiday club morning, or I mean, it might have even been a day actually. Like, got through the whole day, nothing had happened, no catastrophes. And then we were doing this final song and we were doing the actions at the front. And this bee or wasp flew right in front of his face. And he was like, ah. And he hit it. It hit the rim of the trousers and went down into the trouser leg. And without even thinking, instinctively, just like, took his trousers off. He was at the front. And then we're like, mate, you can't be in the front of the stage in just your pants. So he came out the fire exit right into all the parents queuing to pick up their kids and just ran down the alleyway just in his pants. It was an absolute disaster.
I
Fortunately,
think that is the funniest story that we've had today.
I think we got away with it. But yeah, that's,
Yeah.
life lesson. Always wear
Hashtag
trousers under your
inappropriate.
costume. Yeah, be prepared.
Yeah. I bet next time he wore those, he wore trousers underneath.
I don't know if he got asked back, to be honest.
So I've got another highlight. Prayer spaces in schools. We used to do some prayer spaces and reflective spaces as part of my school's work role. And it was just great. So obviously they were wildly accessible. So like we had different themes where young people could be reflective, and if they wanted to, they could pray. They were doing it as part of an off timetable activity. It wasn't an optional thing they would be in. Told they had to come and be part of it. We had, I think, 10 to 12 different stations with different things set up with something they could do with their hands, a craft activity or something, that they could do. And then we had an audio track for each station that guided them through like, something to think about or something if they wanted to, they could pray for. And I just remember, obviously, there were some young people who hated it and didn't want to do it, but there was some who just really got into it and were surprised by how much they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We asked them for feedback and stuff in little groups afterwards, and they just were able to share what they'd found helpful and useful. The opportunity to be able to help young people to be reflective and give them tools to be able to use, which is like an amazing thing to be able to be a part of and do.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. I was already working as a youth worker, but my line manager sent me off to get some more experience to schoolswork.co. So I went and worked with them and LCET as it was then, Youthscape as it is now, and worked with them for a week. And it was really cool. One of the things we did was prayer spaces in the secondary school. And it's way outside my comfort zone, like asking people who aren't Christian if they want to pray. My instinct is they'll be like, no. But actually the uptake was so good and people really were, some people were just using it to reflect and have silence and space, and that's great, but others were actually praying, and maybe for the first time. And we did it here recently. They do in the primary school, they do a prayer space and the school's really supportive. And again, it was all set out, and just seeing these kids just come, some of whom I know are Christian, some of whom I don't think were, just praying and engaging on that level. You think, wow, what a great opportunity that probably I would have, out of my own comfort zone thing, been like, nah, that's not a good idea. Actually, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I bet. I think we've got time for a couple more. I've got quite a
Okay.
few left. I've got quite a few left in here, but I
Let's
don't.
do two more. Let's do two more and hopefully end on a positive.
So yeah, I've got another negative, which is another school-related one. So I used to get booked in. We used to have about 15 schools at the schools charity that I worked at, secondaries that we went into locally, and they booked me in for assemblies every half term for every year group, and this happened more than once where I'd like go in, get to the school 8 a.m., set up for assembly. Assembly was first thing as after registration at like 8:30 or something. So I'd get in there, set up my stuff, make sure that sound system or videos or whatever I was going to use was working, set up all the props and stuff, make sure that the room was set up for an assembly, all that kind of stuff. And quite a few times I'd like get in there, set up, and then like nobody ever came.
Really?
Assembly was cancelled or whatever, or it wasn't on that day, or they didn't get the memo that I was coming. So I was just standing there waiting for an assembly that was never happening anyway. And I remember one time, this is the funniest one. So they booked me in for like a week full of assemblies. I went in on the Monday, got there at 8 a.m., started walking, and in at reception. So reception never mentioned anything, firstly. Signed in, started walking towards the hall, bumped into a teacher, and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm booked to do an assembly." And he was like, "Oh, well, you're not going to be doing one today because it's a teacher training day." So
You could have done one for the
yeah,
teachers.
they put me in for this assembly, and like no pupils were there, so I obviously turned around and left. But why did the receptionist let me sign in to do an assembly?
And not tell you that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh, that's never happened. That has never happened to me, fortunately. I did once forget to go to an assembly the other way around. That was much worse. Because at least it was not your fault. There was one time, and I really didn't ever live it down with the school. They were very gracious about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just diary clash. Didn't clock
Yeah.
it. The reverse of what you did.
Yeah.
Didn't go. And one time I was quite late, and everyone was already sat in an assembly. I just had to wing it. Didn't have time to set up or psych myself up. And that was...
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't do that anymore. I get there really early.
Yeah. I'm just looking through my cards here to see if there's any particularly good or funny ones. So I've got another funny fail story. So I was working in a school doing some anger management mentoring sessions with some young people. And one particular day I was meeting a girl. She'd had a few sessions with me. And it was basically, they'd been referred to this anger management mentoring because if they didn't sort out their anger, they were going to get excluded from the school. This was like their last chance. And so she's had a few sessions with me where we've talked through, well, what is anger? How do you get angry? How can we help you to process that anger in more productive, healthier ways than just shouting at staff and storming out of classes and stuff. And so we were having a session. So I think I'd given her like some homework to do. So like, she was going to test out how to deal with her anger in a better way that week. And she came into the session, and I could tell that something was off with her already. But like, basically, she ended up shouting at me and saying, "I don't need anger management. I don't have an anger management issue." Stormed out, slammed the door, and I was just like sat there, like, okay, obviously there's no anger management issues there. It's so hard sometimes. You're working with young people, but you can't force them to believe or to do anything with the advice you're giving them. You offer it to them, and then they make the choice whether they accept it or not. And it was one of those moments.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that is where you do share something and then they do take the advice or, some sort of positive influence. I'm just trying to think if I've ever had a young person shout at me. Probably in all the years. I definitely had them mock me a lot. So it's just like, I'm so tired. No, they've latched on to the way that you say something or, something you do, and then it becomes like a mocking.
I was in schools a lot to do assemblies and things. A lot of the time I got confused for like a sixth form student. So like would come into the hall and be like, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in this area." And I was like, I'm not a student. I'm here as a guest to lead an assembly. And they're like, "Oh, sorry, we didn't realise." But yeah, that was awkward. I've got one more funny story of a fail that I think I might have shared before on the podcast. On a residential weekend away, I had prepared a whole tray of hot chocolates with squirty cream on top of marshmallows.
Nice.
There was probably about, I want to say like 15 cups of hot chocolate on the tray in like paper away coffee cups. Thankfully, we had young people around a campfire outside. So my plan was make the hot chocolates, bring them outside, give them out. As I step out the back door of this residential centre, my ankle twists and the tray goes up in the air and 15 hot chocolates with marshmallows go everywhere. And I'm just like laying there in the debris with a sprained ankle in
Covered in
shock.
hot
Yeah,
chocolate and
covered in hot
cream.
chocolate, not really knowing what to do because I'm like, I was in shock what had happened. Like, and the young person came out the door and they were like, what's happened? Like, seeing the debris of hot chocolate everywhere. And I was like, oh, I twisted my ankle. And that was definitely a funny moment looking back. Um, yeah,
Oh,
hot chocolate fail.
I've had a few fails like that. Me and a young leader, we devised this quiz where if you did well, you ate nice food, and if you did badly, you ate gross food. And so we were concocting this food of like delicious combinations and horrible combinations, all edible. But we were testing it out, and I got the young leader to test out different ones that we thought would be worse and worse and worse, and he was like, that was not very nice. I'd probably give that like a 5 out of 10 in the grossness scale. And we increased it. We're trying to get it to pretty gross. So I think we stopped there. So it was like 1 out of 10. It wasn't particularly nice. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'd had that one. Anyway, whatever. It was like cornflakes with ketchup or something. Really gross. You eat a little bit. Whatever this concoction was. Having had like this young leader test it, chew it, swallow it. Yeah, that's not bad. I'd eaten some of the others and like rated them out. And this young person got it to their mouth, put it in their mouth, and then immediately threw up because it was so gross. We had another one where we were eating bush tucker survival thing. I bought those dry crickets.
Yeah.
And this like young lad wanting to show off just shoveled the whole bowl. You're supposed to like take one. He like shoveled the whole bowl, like, swallowed them down, and then they immediately came back up like all over the carpet. We played spaghetti Pictionary, so I boiled up a huge vat of spaghetti, and the idea was you had this little tarpaulin and you were making pictures with floppy spaghetti. And it was the only one of the few times I ever shouted at the young people because I was well annoyed. They were just flinging it all around the church hall, and at the time the church hall had carpet, and I was like, right, that's it. Like, we're stopping. Cleared all the spaghetti, and like the spaghetti literally everywhere. So it probably took an hour to clear up all the spaghetti. And then we were mopping down the carpet, scrubbing the patches where spaghetti had gone. And then it did that thing with anything starchy, or like we spent hours and hours cleaning it, got back really late at night or something, then went back in the next day, and where it had dried, all the starch came back. So it was like a total mess. So I had to go with a knife. And it probably took 2 hours scraping all the bits of spaghetti out of the carpet. It took absolutely yonks. And once we were at a trampoline park with a group of young people. One young person was a gymnast, and she was trying to teach me to do like a handoff cartwheel spring thing. And I was like, hey, I reckon I can do that. I reckon I can do that. Not quite realizing how old and unflexible I was. I did a flip-ish, landed so weirdly that my hip hit my rib. My hip bone hit my bottom rib, and I assume broke it because it hurt to breathe for 2 weeks afterwards. I couldn't do anything.
You probably cracked it.
It's so much pain.
Oh no! Yeah, good funny stories though. There's others I remember as well where like just young people were not listening to us, or like young people had come into the venue and were threatening, like young people we didn't know come into youth venues and like threatening to do things where we had to like call the police. I remember one time right outside of our youth club, a parent had a fight with two young people, and we had to break it up. And another neighbour, had called the police. And we had to give statements and stuff and report it back to the school. Stuff like that was just messy. I don't know what had happened. I think he'd been walking his daughter home from school and they'd said something nasty to her, and it flipped a switch in the dad, and they'd started they'd said something back to him, and then they'd thrown a punch at him, and then he was trying to headlock them or something. I don't think he punched them. I think he was trying to headlock them or something.
Yeah.
Then they were punching him and just got into this
My
big, huge
goodness.
mess. And I remember one time my car, we were trying to do some work with a traveller site, which was down the road from where we were based. But nothing we did worked because there was loads of complicated contextual stuff. They couldn't tell the time. They didn't know what day it was. They didn't go to school, so they had no way of knowing what day it was or what time it was. So when we were like, come on a Tuesday at 10 and we'll hang out with you and you can come and use our youth centre, it never worked out in the end. And then one day my car got dented by one of them because they were causing trouble outside one day and thought it'd be funny to dent someone's car, and that ended up being mine, and I had to report it to the police. Just like, this is some of the worst bits of the job. And obviously we've got to mention safeguarding as a negative, because that just is a whole negative, especially when you have stuff you've got to report, young people disclosing things that need action and reporting. It's just a whole negative side of the job.
And the fear of getting it wrong as well, in that, the panic.
Just heavy to hold, isn't it, and heavy to deal with. But then on the flip side, just being able to see young people grow in faith and being able to try their faith out. I remember one year at Soul Survivor Festival, we had young people who were like praying for healing and like healing other people there, and they were like just buzzing off the story of God working through them to heal people, and that was amazing. And finding yourself in places where you have a really big influence for good. The relationship we had with that local school, they asked us to host a whole end of year assembly at Christmas time, and they wanted us to lead the whole thing. So we got a band together, we put content together, we were getting people to think about what Christmas really means, and those opportunities to just be able to speak to a big audience of young people and help them to unpack a little bit and think through what does this mean for them, and what do Christians believe in, how can that have an impact on them.
And even that safeguarding stuff that we talked about earlier, actually, although it's not very nice, to be in that place where you're in that gap for those young people, and to know that you're there and doing that thing is totally not a pleasant thing to do and doesn't feel good in the time. But from a heaven type perspective, knowing that you can be a part of something that's supporting young people when hard stuff's happening. Yeah, it is a positive, even though retrospectively it feels like a positive. In the time it feels like, oh, this is so heavy and hard and breaks your heart and it's anxiety inducing.
Yeah. That's a bunch of our highlights and lowlights from youth ministry. Hopefully they've been entertaining for you. This is the Christmas special. We want to wish you
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. We hope that you have time during this period to reflect about what the real meaning of Christmas means to you, and that you have time within this period to rest and recuperate and kind of gear up for ministry starting again next year. We're cheering you on in your ministry, and if there's any way we can support you through Youthwork Plus, then please do get in touch through advice or consultancy, or if you've just got a question for us, maybe you want to appear as a guest on the podcast, maybe we can point you in the direction of a good resource. We've got a big resource library. We've just started adding more recommendations to, so check that out on our website, youthworkplus.com /resource library. You'll be able to see that. There's over 100 different resources on there for youth and kids ministry. If you want to come to some of our training, then check out our social media to see what training stuff we've got up and running. We're hoping to do some more in the new year, so make sure you are in the loop about that. Apart from that, we hope you have a very Christmas. Thanks for tuning in today. Obviously, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, follow our future podcast episodes. Hope that you can recommend this to somebody else as a inspiring or funny or entertaining thing to listen to. Thanks for coming on today, Ollie.
It's been nice to be back. Thanks for having me back.
It's been great to have you back and to hear some of your highlights and lowlights. I've loved them. Thanks for making me laugh with some of your fails.
Always happy. Got a big long list. It's nice to be back. Thank you for listening and joining in.
You're welcome. And I'll see the rest of you on the next one. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I'll see you later. Bye. Yes.